Hello there, everyone, and welcome to the pod. Like, we're doing something new and fresh. We've never tried this before, and who knows? We figured we'd give it a go. So, welcome to Phoenix Down the Rabbit Hole. My name's Joe, or you may know me as Joesephyr, and this is Lucis. And we wanted to do something together where we've actually been planning this for a while, haven't we? We've kind of talked about it. We've want to do something Final Fantasy related that just creates discussion, creates just like conversation points between us. We have both got a long history with the franchise in very different ways. And yeah, we thought we'd share that with all of you and see if you guys wanted to be a part of the conversation as well. But obviously there's going to be a lot of opinions and stuff flying around here. So if you don't like it, you can sound off in the comments below, but keep it respectful because we're learning as much as anybody else is. So yeah, feel free to introduce yourself.
Yeah, you're free to tell me if I'm wrong in the comments. Just be nice.
Yeah, exactly. We don't know what we're doing. We just think we're just pretending.
Yeah, so I'm Lucis. Me and Joe have been friends for quite a while, and yeah, as I said, this has been in
which
talks.
I apologise.
It's fine. It's fine. We'll get to that. We'll get to that.
Yeah.
But yeah, we've been in talks about doing this for a long time. I've wanted to do a podcast for the longest time, and guess never really had a platform to do one. And
so he's stealing
Joe...
mine.
Well, kind of. Obviously, this, as I said, I'm doing this purely for just the enjoyment of it, and
Me
I
too.
just think, and I just think slapping it onto your channel only helps you, right? And then I get to do something fun, and then and we'll see where it goes from there.
Exactly. So, for those of you who don't know me, my name's Joe. I've been a full-time streamer for the last 3 years. And my history with Final Fantasy, I've played Final Fantasy games since I was very, very young. Like 8 years old, I reckon, must have been the first time I played one. And I am now not 8 years old. We don't need to go any further than that. And then I've worked at Square Enix in the past as a community manager, hosted for Square Enix as a commentator for Final Fantasy TCG. I was well known within the spheres for Final Fantasy's mobile titles for a while, particularly Dissidia Opera Omnia, but since in recent times I've now kind of axed that from what I do, so that's been an interesting journey. So I've pretty much enjoyed Final Fantasy from every possible angle, and I have insights that I've played every single one of them to at least some extent, except for one, and I'm sure we'll get to that at some point, but I'm planning on changing that soon. And yeah, I just thought that it would be fun to just throw everything out on the line. I have a lot of opinions when it comes to this franchise because I love it.
Not all of them good. Some of them are hot takes. No, yeah, unfortunately my life is really not as interesting as Joe's. Joe's had Joe's really had the old English saying, his finger in too many pies. Or been.
But we didn't talk about that.
Well, you've been everywhere, right? But I am currently a junior games designer / QA tester in the industry at the moment. So I guess you'll get that kind of insight from me. I'm not going to pretend like I know everything because I don't. But if you were interested in any kind of design talks about, how games work, what is more interesting, how you can keep a player's attention. Effectively, my job is to find the fun, right? Which is a joke we use a lot, but it's a bit. Sometimes finding the fun can mean multiple different things. But I think Square do a pretty good job of usually finding the fun. But again, that's a conversation for another time.
And our journey's actually been kind of interesting because when Lucis and I first met, we actually had no idea that the other person liked Final Fantasy. Like, we had no idea. We first met at Smash Bros tournaments. We used to go, it was for Smash Bros for Wii U, so Smash 4. I was obsessed with it because I wanted to play Bayonetta, because we'll talk about our other favourite games later, but I'm obsessed with Bayonetta as a character. Started turning up to these tournaments. I'm like, oh yeah, no, I'm really good, I'm doing really well. Of course, I didn't know that she was absolutely busted at the time, and I'm like, right, okay, humble moment. But then we started talking there, and then we kind of we didn't sort of like grow apart, but we didn't really know each other all that well. And then we went to, was it KupoCon?
Do you know, just I've got to cut you off there. Do you know what made it worse as well as to why we had no idea why we why we both love Final Fantasy.
Okay.
Neither of us played a Final Fantasy character. Cloud was out then,
Oh, he
and
was.
and neither of us played him. It's because I was a Sonic main at the time.
And then
And
I,
then
I
you,
went from Bayonetta to Ryu
yeah,
because
yeah,
I got
yeah.
really upset that people kept saying that it wasn't me that was winning, it was her, and then I played Ryu.
I just find it really funny because obviously I was super excited when Cloud came out, and I was still
Yeah, me
learning him at
too.
the time, and I didn't realize, and then yeah, I just so obviously we would have had no idea that each other loved it until we met each other at the convention later on.
Well, the
But
funny thing is that when we met at that convention, I was dressed as Kefka.
yeah, I was literally just about to say I didn't have a clue. I just remember you coming up to me, and then just imagine you've just got this person in full clad makeup, this full Kefka makeup, just walks up to you and is like, "How you doing, babes?" or something like that. You said something like that
That does
to me,
sound like something I would do.
and I was like, and then I was like, "Oh!" and it sort of clicked, and I was like, "Oh, okay." And then yeah, and then after that, to be honest, it felt like we hadn't even stopped talking.
Yeah, but then those kinds of things are sort of, when I started streaming and doing all of that, those kinds of connections where like you could not speak for ages and then you see each other for the first time in potentially years and you act like you've seen each other last week. Like those are the kinds of connections that matter to me. And I have had that. I've been very lucky to have that, a lot of that come from Final Fantasy as well. Like, people who work at Square Enix, people who are other influencers for Final Fantasy products, even people who aren't Final Fantasy fans publicly. I've been in scene at like TwitchCon and things like that, and people will come up to me and talk to me about Final Fantasy, and I think it's such a big thing that this one franchise has connected so many people. And we will talk about all of that and how Final Fantasy sort of sets itself apart. But I think one thing I love is just how quickly people make connections over that franchise. Like, take us two as an example. We were in a competitive environment previously, which is normally not the greatest place to make lasting connections, in my experience. But you'd be surprised how... I mean, he's rolling his eyes because he knows I'm right. But I had that with Final Fantasy TCG as well, because before I started doing mobile stuff or now doing stuff for other games in the franchise, like I went to a Final Fantasy 16 event recently, and it all kind of grew from the sprout that was FFTCG as a content creator. And because of the people I've met through these different communities, all of them, cosplay, card games, mobile games, MMOs, they all kind of stem from that one place. And I think that that's amazing.
To be honest with you, I have met people through Final Fantasy, and I would like to meet more people. Hence, I mean, this would be a good avenue to do it, right? Having more conversations with people who have the same interest as me is definitely something that would super interest me. But even though I live and breathe video games, obviously I do it for a living. I still find myself staying in and playing video games, and then I'm like, oh, maybe I should go to that event, or maybe I'm not, and sometimes I don't. And I usually, as an example, like I obviously didn't get tickets for FanFest this year, which I really would have liked to have gone to. I did get tickets to, yeah, I know, yeah, some people are lucky, but I got Symphony tickets, so that's fine. And
I didn't get those, so I'm actually quite jealous of that, because we've both done Distant Worlds, haven't we?
Yeah,
you've done Distant Worlds. I've done it. Yeah, I've been 4 times.
Yeah, and I went to the Final Fantasy VII remake concert as well, which was brilliant.
Yes,
as well.
I did that one as well. That was really good. I fell in love with Hollow that day.
I've always loved that song.
I didn't. I actually hated Hollow when it first came out. I was like, this doesn't fit. It sounds weird. But this is, I'm somebody that really liked FF102 soundtrack when that came out. So I was like, what do I know? So basically what we're trying to do is, like, with this first episode, we want anyone who's listening to kind of get to know us, get to know what we're about, get to know just like what the pod is going to be about and how it's going to relate to Final Fantasy, because I've seen loads of podcasts for Final Fantasy like 14 and specifically, or I've seen some for specific titles, but I think that as a community member who just adores the franchise and just gaming in general, I think that introducing a podcast where we can talk about just how much we love the characters, the stories, the music, the combat, the mechanics, how you explore the games, how the different things you can do with them. And both of us are big 14 players as well.
Well, I mean, even if it's not just the franchise in general, 14 specifically, I know. I mean, 14's so big now. It's crazy.
Mm.
Like when you think about how much it's grown over the past couple of years, I mean, Shadowbringers was kind of what just skyrocketed it into popularity. But
I think the pandemic helped.
yeah, true.
The pandemic absolutely helped. Like, I think that because I started playing 14 at the end. Well, I say I started playing it at the end of Stormblood. I actually started just before Stormblood came out, but I didn't really understand because I'd never played an MMO before that point. I didn't really understand it. But after the like 4.3, I'd say was when I properly started playing. And then Shadowbringers completely blew me away. Endwalker completely blew me away. And again, like the people I've met through FF14, like for me, I love games. I've always loved games since I was very little. But to me, the conversation almost makes them a means to an end, which sounds really stupid because I'll sit in and play a game for 24 hours at a time because I'm an idiot.
I still can't believe you did that.
I know. I did a stream recently that was I tried to do 24 hours in one go, playing through every Final Fantasy, one after the other. We got 12 hours in. And then I was like, I need to take a break from it. Was sick. Then came up and tried to carry on. And I was like, no, do you know what? I'll split this up into multiple streams. It's too much. But I got to the end of FF4. So I know these games.
You did speedrun them quickly.
I did. I love watching speedruns of Final Fantasy because I have done speedrunning before. I've done FF10 and now I'm doing this kind of challenge run with the early games with the pixel remasters, which you can see my big box there for that. I actually have you to thank in part for that.
Yeah.
Then, you know, I love these early games and just seeing how quickly you can do it. And the tactics that speedrunners employ, I think are fascinating. There's so many cool things that you just wouldn't think to do unless you were speedrunning it.
Do you know what? That's probably another topic for another time. But being a designer, the aspect of speedrunning is effectively I can either choose to work with or against speedrunners. Is a whole topic of conversation that I could probably spout on for hours. But
well, I mean, I have some speedrunner friends that I would love to get on here and like discuss it. That's something else I do want to bring up actually. I like if people are wanting to support this podcast, I've got a lot of people that I would love to get on here as well, because I have a lot of other content creator friends within the Final Fantasy sphere, and it would be amazing to have some of them come and guest on here. But obviously, I'm not going to ask them to do that until we've kind of got off the ground running. If that's something that you guys would like to see, leave comments. Let's talk about it. Who would you love to see come on and join us to chat about Final Fantasy? It would be great to hear from you.
14 is obviously not. We should preface that 14 is not the only thing we're going to be talking about. And obviously,
no, we will have episodes kind of dedicated to 14.
As you can already tell, we will be going off on tangents because we've already gone off on about 4 or 5 tangents, but that's perfectly fine. But
that's what the podcast's all about.
Yes, so we'll be talking about the other games too in the franchise. I'm guilty of not having played all of them. I'm sorry. I'm trying to. As much as Final Fantasy is my favorite series, I haven't got
one
yet.
that I haven't played. One, and I want to, but it's huge. So I'm like, it's huge and it's old. Because the only FF game I haven't played is 11.
Oh, yeah.
It's the only one. And I'm like, it's still got its servers running. I know it's not the same experience as it was when it came out because it is that much older. But I want to play it. But again, I want to have a crowd to play it with. I feel like a game like 11 is probably quite hard to play by yourself. I know you have like trusts and stuff like you do in 14. But if I want the actual experience, I want to play it with people.
I don't know if I could bring myself to play that. This is the thing. I haven't played 11. Unfortunately, I just didn't have access to be able to play it when it was current.
No, me neither.
Despite how I may look, I am older than how I look. I get told I have a baby face, but I am almost 30 years old, believe it or not. So
I'm not. I don't know what 30 looks like.
Oh yeah, no, obviously. Don't look a day over 17, Joe. I also, unfortunately, haven't played from 4 downwards because I've been weird and I decided that I would do my playthrough of Final Fantasy backwards. So obviously I'd played like different ones, but like here and there depending on which one. But yeah, I'm still yet to play 4 to 1.
Okay.
But I'm using the pixel remasters to do that. But
I'll be very interested to see what your thoughts on 2 will be.
Yeah, I, I don't think I'll like it because from
I've grown a bit of a soft spot for two.
oh,
I
of
used to
course you have.
hate it.
Your this is the problem is your opinion on certain games in the franchise fluctuates so much.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, people ask me. I mean, this brings us to what we were going to talk about, which is quite simply what our favourite games in the series are. My favourite FF is the last one I played. Realistically, I mean, it's not. I have two favourites of the single player ones. Like, I'm not going to include 14 in this. And I want to make videos all about like the franchise because I've realised that I just love talking about the games. I just always try to shy away from like rankings and tier lists because people get really funny about it. But I'm like, just create discussion. It's good. Anyway, but my favorite Final Fantasy is 9. It's 9, but it's not because I think that 9, in terms of its story, its characters, etc., it's timeless. If you tried to play 9 recently, that game is slow. Yeah. Everything moves at a snail's pace, and I'm like, I'm sure this wasn't like this when I played it as a kid, but I still love it. So, but because of that, and because I'm looking for just a pure game experience, it's 5. I love FF5. I love everything about FF5. I love the fact that the story doesn't take itself too seriously. I love the mechanics of 5. I love how breakable 5 is. Faris has become one of my favorite characters just because I love her. I don't think it's the best at everything, but there's just a magic in 5 and a purity in 5 that I just adore.
It's funny because obviously 5 is the most recent one I've played, right? So okay. I played 5 maybe 3 or 4 months ago now for the first time, mind you. And yeah, I mean, I adored it because I played 6 before that as well and finished that, and and I know a lot of people have 6 as their favorite, which is fine.
I actually think 6 is really overrated.
Well, this is the thing: I
think Nostalgia Goggles plays a lot with 6.
I enjoyed 5 a lot more than I enjoyed 6, and that's coming from someone who's new coming into the series, or not new, but new coming into playing those games. Yeah, because I'd only played from basically the PS1 era. But yeah, I don't know. 5 is really slept on. It's really good.
I think there's a lot of design aspects that people like, because this happened with 9 and with 5, I've discovered. Because when I was young, when I was a kid, which was a while ago, if you loved 8 and 9, like 8 kind of was fine because the graphics were really a big deal for FF8 when it came out. But 7 was the one. Like, 7 was the one. Whereas Final Fantasy 9 was kind of the oddball of the group. I don't know if anyone else in their 30s will agree with me in this, like the 90s kids. But if you loved FF9 as a kid, everyone was like, really? Not 7? Whereas now, everyone loves 9. Everyone loves 9. Everyone loves the characters. Vivi is everyone's favourite character. And, you know, I was kind of shocked by that. And like, I think a big part of it was when Sakaguchi turned around and said that it was his favourite game.
I think
that elevated it a lot.
Do you think it also might have something to do with the fact that we haven't really had that traditional style of Final Fantasy, really? I guess 14 sort of meets that, but it's not a single player game. 9 was effectively the last one that we really had. And obviously that was, that classic medieval fantasy single player
but the ones before 9 weren't even that, really. Like 6, 7 and 8, they've all got their steampunk sci-fi elements as well.
And that's what I mean.
It actually does have them too. It's just later on in the game. Like you look at like Terra, it's almost, and Pandemonium, it's almost kind of H.R. Geiger-esque and Alien inspired in some of its designs.
It's the culmination of the series, right? So 9 has pretty much every staple you can imagine from the series, which is why so people look back on it fondly now, because during then Final Fantasy went through a huge change with 8 and 9, and then afterwards, obviously they were pumping them out, right? They got 7, 8, 9, and 10 all out within, what was it, the space of 3 or 4 years?
Yeah, it was quite short. It was quite a short space of time. But then they've been doing that for a while. Like FF1 to 5 are all a year apart from each other. It's only FF6 that took a little bit longer.
Yeah, I mean, I can't even imagine. Like, I want to get into the business practices of Square Enix right now, because obviously Yoshi P, that man is a machine. The amount of stuff he works on is it's honestly scary. Like, I, as an unorganized person, he is everything I aspire to be and more. I cannot imagine how you could be that organized.
Lovely to talk to. Like because I was fortunate enough to meet him, like recently. I know, but I was fortunate enough to meet him, and we'll definitely go over that experience in greater detail. But I do want to kind of like get back on track and just say like, so what is your favorite Final Fantasy? You haven't said.
So, my favorite is 10.
That's a good one.
10 is also, so I know this might start another discussion, but 10 was my first. However, I was introduced to Final Fantasy from my brother, and I'll always remember this story because I always thought it was quite interesting. So I was in Blockbuster. Remember good old Blockbuster Video where you could...
No, I'm too young for that.
Oh, okay, sorry, yeah, I forgot. But yeah, I remember I used to rent games all the time on the weekend, and I remember renting out Final Fantasy X-2. So technically, X-2 was my first Final Fantasy, but
You
it
played
wasn't.
X-2 before 10.
Well, yeah, because I didn't know any different. I just picked. I was a kid. I was, I must have been. I was probably still in primary school at the time, so
Right, okay.
obviously I didn't really know what I was picking up and playing. Because X-2, I didn't know what Roman numerals were as a kid. I was just, it's like X, cool. X is cool. Like just.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So when I sat down to play it, I remember my brother came into the room and was like, "Oh, is that you're playing Final Fantasy?" And I was like, "What's?" I was like, "Yeah." I was like, because I knew nothing about it, and he was like, "This is the second one, right?" And he doesn't know like loads about the series, but he knows like some stuff. And yeah, apparently he'd played 10 with one of his friends, and he borrowed 10 off of one of his friends and lent it to me, and then I fell in love. Like I just played it, and obviously being from Europe, we had the experience of the Dark Aeons and all of the super bosses.
It's my favorite thing about 10.
Exactly, it's mine as well.
I like the super. Honestly, that's one of my favorite things about all of the FF games is that end game. The end game. If the end game is duff, it makes me like the game less.
Yeah, so grinding in the arena to get like all of the gear and stuff. I just spent countless hours capturing all the monsters, getting ready to fight. And I remember when
hours Chocobo racing.
Yeah, like I beat. I remember the first time I beat Penance legit because I used Zanmoto the first time to beat him. Obviously.
Oh yeah, we all use your Jimbo on Penance. It's fine.
Like,
there's no shame in it.
Yeah, but then afterwards,
no matter what the internet tells you, there's no shame in Zanmatoing at Penance because otherwise it's just an exercise in patience.
Yeah, I beat him with some scuffed setup before. Obviously, I know there's like the auto potion method now. I know a lot about 10, by the way. So if I ever go off on any tangents that people don't understand specifically about 10, then maybe put a comment down or ignore or completely ignore what I just said because we'll be talking science when it comes to 10. But yeah, but this is before all of the auto potion method and everything. I'd use some really scuffed setup to beat him.
See, I think it's interesting because you said that your favorite was kind of your first Final Fantasy, and I think it's a really common thing because I hear that a lot. Like a lot of people say, "Oh, your favorite Final Fantasy is always the first." That's not the case for me. Truth be told, my first Final Fantasy was 7. Kind of. I was very young. And I played it around a friend's house from school, and I didn't get it. I was like, "This is crap. I don't understand. Things change." But my first Final Fantasy was 8, like properly. Like I remember, I went into the store, it was Electronics Boutique at the time, and they had these TV screens that showed whatever new games were out that week. And I remember seeing the opening cutscene, Liberi Fatali, all of it, on this TV screen and being like, because nothing beat that. The visual, like my jaw was on the floor. I'm like, I need to play this game. I need to play this game. And I loved it. But it's not my favorite. Like 9, I think partially because it's the first one I was excited for.
Oh, so you had the build up. So being excited
like
for it to
I think
release,
that has a part to play in it. And I do genuinely think the character and the story and the themes of 9 really left a lasting impact on me, and the end game as well, like Ozma, Excalibur 2. I mean, looking back at it, 9's got some weird janky stuff in it that doesn't make any sense. But as a kid, I just loved it. Like, but I remember like 10 as well. Like, I genuinely don't think there is a Final Fantasy game that I dislike.
Yeah, I don't think there is either. From the main series, right?
Yeah. Like, I mean, there are some I think are weaker. I do think the more recent ones are a bit weaker. I think 15. I don't think 15 is a bad game. I love 15, but there are more holes in 15 that I can pick apart than in some of the earlier ones.
But then you can argue that by saying that 15 has some of the best character writing ever. Like the chemistry between those 4 party members is it's amazing.
The ending to 15, like, I mean, I think that technology has a big part to play in it as well, because like I will never forget it. The bit where they're, I mean, okay, I'm going to say this as well before we preface anything. We're going to be talking about these games in great detail, so spoiler warnings for everybody. Because you can't talk about these games without really, or at least their stories, without going into events that perhaps you would consider spoilers. So if that's something that bothers you, then perhaps leave a comment or something like that, and then that way we'll know for future episodes that we shouldn't cover certain things.
Yeah,
but we ain't talking about 16 yet, so...
Yeah, because spoiler check marking things is going to be really difficult, because obviously this is a free-flowing conversation.
If you want the conversation to flow naturally, it's just the way it's going to go. So I'm going to warn people about that now. So now that that's out of the way, at the end, like the very end of FF15, when they're all around the campfire, and the friggin' chin wobble, when Noctis has the little chin wobble when he chokes up, that was it. I was done. That was it.
Yeah, it just makes you care about those characters so much. Like, again, it has its flaws.
As a game, I do think it's weaker.
Yeah, but this is the thing. I think a weak FF game is still a decent video game compared to the standards of like other games and other franchises. Like, obviously Final Fantasy is Square Enix's baby, right? They want to always make sure that whenever that name is slapped on something, that it has a certain bar that it reaches. Mm-hmm. And I think most of the time they accomplish that, because a lot of people have their issues with 13, to name an example, right? But as
last time I played it.
I was just about to say, as you discovered, when you replay 13, like, it's really not as bad as what people make it out to be.
I think the trouble is that I think, and I can't speak for other people, I'm not putting words in other people's mouths, but I think people have this idea of the nostalgia that you and I have felt by playing 9, 10, and they latch onto that. And so when the next experience doesn't quite match the idea they have in their head, it's bad. Like, so yeah. People, like, there are things I think are weaker about 13, sorry. Like, I don't like the fact that your party is stuck with you until, like, the last third of the game. But that's true of 4 as well. And people tend to forget that some of this stuff doesn't necessarily... It's not necessarily the first time they've done these things. Because 4, your party is stuck until right at the end of the game. And then it's still stuck. You still can't change it around. But I think also the fact that with FF13, the fact that you had like 1 or 2 characters a lot did make that sting a little bit more. And people like to call it Corridor Simulator. 10 does that for a good 2/3 of the game. But
yeah, no, it does. It's really, really linear.
But 10 does break it up with like towns and stop gaps between things. Like, there's side quests, there's things to distract you in 10 that 13 doesn't have. So I understand the criticism of a 13 being too linear, but I think that it's like, that's not the correct way I would criticize it. I'd say it's too linear without other distraction, because 10 is also linear. In fact, most of them are. They're just dressed up with a world map. And I think that, like, I mean, Christ, I could talk for hours on why I think open world is the most ridiculous thing in the world. Like, I just think it's like, does it really matter if you can walk around in a circle rather than in a straight line? You're still trying to get to the same place.
I would more than happily do an episode on linearity versus open world.
But that's me being a grumpy old man, so just ignore that.
I should also say that I am a sucker for 7 because I'm an edgy boy. So obviously
7 is iconic for a reason. It is. Like, I've had so many people on stream or just in my periphery just say like, oh, 7's really overrated, 7's this, 7's that, and I'm like, no, 7 deserves the accolades it has. 100%.
Again, actually, do you know what? I might, if anyone who has that opinion ends up watching this, or I would welcome them to watch another episode that I had planned, which was talking about the design specifically of 7. Because honestly, the materia system is one of the most incredible systems that in an RPG, like full stop.
You think
It
so?
is, it's what you can do with it is incredible. I think obviously, I think it's more about the idea of what you could do, because I know obviously it's limited to the fact of how many options there actually are. But when you think about the idea that comes from materia, so the idea of being able to mix any of these things together to do cool things.
See, it's interesting because, sorry, I'll let you finish.
It opens up like so many possibilities, and then you think of all the material that they could add, things that aren't specifically in the game. Maybe they didn't have time, maybe they just didn't think of it, but you think of all I've had all these material combinations in my head that you could think of that aren't real, but you would think, wow, that would be really cool. And how would it interact from a gameplay perspective?
I would be interested to see that system expanded, because I actually think Remake dilutes it. I love Remake, just as an FYI. I really like Remake, but I think that the materia system is a little bit diluted compared to the original. But I find it interesting that you say that, purely because I think that my issue... I like the materia system as a system, but the implementation of it, 10 suffers this as well. To a certain... 5 definitely does, which is interesting because it is my favourite one. But I feel that it gets to a point where your characters lose identity because you can build them all to be the same. And most people do. Like, if you max out the sphere grid, a materia strategy, or anything like that, it's quite hard to then define each character's role as an individual from a gameplay perspective, outside of like their limit breaks and overdrives. But you can, but the truth is that you can not do that. You can make them more defined. Like, this is the tank role, this is the thief role. It's just a bit more... I feel like if you're going to go for optimization and min-maxing, every character ends up the same. So I prefer stuff like 6 or... I mean, even FF1, where a character has a defined role. I've always preferred that.
See, I prefer the job system.
See, that's the thing. I say this, and I like 5's my favorite. Sometimes, like, this is the thing. Like, you know, people are going to come for me in the comments because I'm probably a massive hypocrite with half the stuff I say. Again,
10, as you said, anyone can be anything, and the only thing that defines them is their overdrive, which is fair enough. So obviously that means that Tidus, Waka, and Riku are the 3 best characters in the game
because their overdrives are just better.
Yeah,
and well, you know, Grand Summon is a thing.
It's okay. I don't think. I mean. If you really want
all that really matters is how many hit, like, because the actual value of the damage doesn't matter when you hit the max value. It's how many times you see that number.
Exactly.
So that's why attack reels is like the best move in the game.
But then I would argue that Riku is even better, because
Riku does have some pretty busted stuff.
Yeah, so some of her mixes just... Again, I'm getting really like in depth into 10 again. I can't help it, but
as somebody who has speedrun FF10, Yuna's broken.
she is. It's just, you know.
But that's the thing. It's like, again, this brings me back to what makes FF so special. It's just the number of avenues you can explore within that franchise. Like, you could not look at a single cutscene in an FF game and still enjoy it. And I think that, like, I mean, people are probably going to come for me in the comments and go, what? No, it's all about the story. I'm like, yeah, it is for the majority of people, but there are people that can get different levels of enjoyment out of different aspects of the game. And there are a lot of games that can do that, but they're all in best of lists and stuff like that. So that's a pretty good hallmark of a good franchise.
We've spoken about this before, but I suck at replaying video games. I can't bring myself to do it. I don't know what it is. For some reason, whenever I think about replaying a game or I sit down to do it, I stop like halfway through. So a game has to have incredible replay value for me to play. 10 brings me back due to I like fighting the Dark Aeons again, and so that's enough replay value for me there. I still wish we had an option to skip the cutscenes though, even in the HD ports. I know there's a mod for it.
Why?
It's so dumb, right? But again, I'm obviously a big, like, I'm super into narrative as well. So the narrative of the games obviously is the reason why I love 10 so much, is because it literally destroyed me, right? So
same reason I like a lot of things.
Yeah, so I think narrative is important for having it stick in your head. So the game will stick in your head if it has a good narrative. So that's what makes you think back. So I think this is what, when you think about nine being your favorite, is you got excited about it, and I get the narrative probably sticks in your head as well. Because
I certainly ate the speed of the bloody game. I can tell you that for free.
Well, this is the thing. But obviously, there's a reason as to why you still love it so much. I mean, we all know the "You're Not Alone" scene is incredible, right? And that scene will always stick with me. That's one of my favorite scenes in Final Fantasy now.
It's a very good one. It is a very good. It sticks with a lot of people. It is a really good one.
But I mean, obviously, again, you made it sound like that wasn't your favorite moment just then.
It's not.
Exactly, because everyone probably has loads of different favorite moments. It doesn't. There's so many in each of the games, and it can be any, and you can have a discussion with anyone, and they'll tell you different things.
Yep. My favorite bit is Kuja turning into Trans Kuja and destroying Terra. A, because it's just cool, and B, oh my, okay, that's an episode we need to get to. Kefka is not the only one that won. Don't come for me. I swear to God. The number of times everyone's like, Kefka's the only one that managed to win. I'm like, no, absolute BS. There are so many villains in that franchise that win. Anyway, sidetrack.
I'd argue Sin won as well for ages. I'd argue Sin won as well for ages. Anyway, sorry, again.
Honestly, it's one of like my biggest pet peeves in arguing on camera or anything like that. Is like, Kefka's not the only one that won, and I love Kefka. Just as an FYI, I cosplay the man. I love him, but he's not the only one. But it's really cool. It's a turning point for a villain character where he just, maybe there's something a bit like sadistic in me, because I like it when like characters snap and something just goes off. Like Nier Automata, love the narrative in that game. 9S, if you know, you know. But I just think that there are so many spectacle moments in Final Fantasy that just makes such a big difference to them. So now, okay, so now that we're talking about that, who are your favorite characters? Because I've just named one of them, Kuja, because I just adore, I like his design. I'm a big villain fan. I am a big villain fan. I adore his raison d'etre, as it were. Like, the whole idea of him, I think, is very relatable, even if his methods aren't. Like, he's afraid of dying, basically, or he's afraid of being forgotten, which I think is a very relatable thing. And the themes of FF9 permeate it perfectly. Like, one of my other favorite characters is Vivi, because Vivi and Kuja have the same story arc done differently. And I love that about that game. It's like, you know, the right way to deal with it and the wrong way of dealing with it. So I really like those two. Honestly, there are very few characters in Final Fantasy I don't love. But the other, if I'm going to go with three, I'll say Vivi, Kuja, and Warrior of Light. Because I like Warrior of Light as an icon. He doesn't have a lot of character. He's not really story heavy. But he is Final Fantasy. You see that image, you know what you're looking at. And I think that most of my favorite things, like my favorite piece of music is the main theme of Final Fantasy. My favorite, one of my favorite characters is Warrior of Light, because he's an icon for the entire franchise. I like things that are emblematic of the whole series, because they're so few and far between.
You're not going to make me break it down to 3, are you?
Yes.
Is that... Oh,
I could go on for about, like, I could give you another 50.
Oh, right.
But we only have a limited amount of time, so give it to 3. And that's something that the people in the comments below can talk about as well. Give me 3 of your favorite characters and why.
I know a lot of people's favorite character tend to come down to how they are during their character arcs, right? So what happens to that character and why they like them. That tends to be why a lot of people like characters, you know. I've done a little bit of reading on writing and things like that, but not too much. But
if there is a bit of an echo, I apologize. I will sort it out for the next one. I'm still learning.
Yeah, so for me it's more, I'm kind of basic in the fact that a character's personality and design is very important to me. Noctis is up there, but that's not only due to the fact that I think he has a brilliant character arc, it's also due to the fact that, you know, I like his design. Like, again, Nomura's fashion sense is something that we want to talk about as well, because I think that man is an incredible character designer.
Terrible writer.
Yeah, I mean, but I think as a character designer, I think he's a genius.
Yeah, I do too, and I know where his references come from and everything. I love it.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to notice a theme with the 3 characters that I'm going to mention straight away. Obviously, the next one.
Teenage edgelords.
Not all teenagers, but so obviously Cloud is the next one.
So yes. Would we?
Yeah, again, he fits that archetype, but I think he's way more interesting. Because this is the thing: is a lot of people, whenever they haven't played 7 or they look from the outside of it, they're always like, "Oh, that's just the edgy boy, right?" I'm like, well,
I've always liked Cloud when he was self-aware, and I think the remake actually does quite a good job of it, because I was really nervous about 7 Remake coming around and doing that. But like when I think of FF7, I think of like the moment where like he notices the finger pointing above his head and stuff like that. Silliness. I think I like it when Final Fantasy doesn't take itself too seriously.
yeah.
Until it does, because you have to have peaks and valleys. Like it can't all be, you know, melancholy for however many hours, because if you get that, you end up with Advent Children.
I'll save my thoughts on Advent Children.
Okay.
I'm gonna save. I'll save that one. And then the last one is Auron. And I am growing even more respect for him the older I get. So
What makes me laugh is that like Auron is one of like the oldest party member characters, and he's younger than me. I'm like, really? Because he's like 30. He doesn't look 30. I'll tell you that.
I think he's 35 because I had the
35.
strategy guides.
Okay. You don't look 35. Maybe I look as old as Auron. I don't know. Distinguished.
I wouldn't say so.
Okay, well, I'll take it.
But yeah, Auron is, as I said, my fondness for him is getting bigger the older I get. I appreciate him more because obviously I want to see, which is why I'm glad that we've got this whole thing with Clive being like older as well.
Yeah, no, I do too. I mean, we are kind of specifically not talking about FF16 in this particular episode because, I mean, the game's not out yet, but trust we're going to talk about it in great detail, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah.
Because we're both very excited about it, because we'll get to, like, we can sort of move on to this actually because it's a perfect segue. What our other favourite games are. So a lot of people distance themselves from FF16, and it's going to be, I think it's going to be quite divisive because obviously it's very different to previous Final Fantasies. I actually avoided looking at anything to do with 16 because it's like, I know I'm buying this game. I'm a bit weird with trailers. Like, if I know I'm going to buy a game, I will avoid anything to do with it until it's in my hands.
I'll avoid it till I'm asked to go play it. I have played the game.
That did kind of throw a spanner in the works. I was like, I guess I'm going to have to look at it now. Yeah, I try and avoid things where I can, but as a content creator and as someone who does content creation for a living, probably not the wisest move. But yeah, so our other favorite games, both of us are actually very big fans of action RPGs. So Devil May Cry, Ninja Gaiden, God of War, Bayonetta, you know, like those kinds of games I'm a big fan of, and I know you're a huge fan of Devil May Cry in particular. And again, I know a lot of people that actually, you would think that the crossover between those two types of games was really not there. You'd be surprised. I'm like, actually, this does kind of feel like a natural progression for Final Fantasy to appeal to a wider audience. Because people want that, like, quick action. Turn-based does work. I won't say it doesn't, because it does. Like, people are obsessing over Honkai Star Rail and Octopath Traveler and stuff like that. So I won't say that turn-based doesn't work. But I don't think it's an incorrect decision to try and make Final Fantasy into something different, because it's always done it. Like, it hasn't been traditionally turn-based since FF10, and even FF10's different from the ones before it.
I think Square have always tried to push the envelope with Final Fantasy. I think that's the most important thing, is as soon as they could think of a system that wasn't pure turn-based, they did it with the ATB.
Yeah.
Like, again, like, ATB is not turn-based. And they've always been trying to do things like that all the time. I mean, look what they... I forgot to mention, actually. I always forget. It's really bad. I absolutely adore 12, by the way. And I didn't mention it when we were talking about my favorites.
It's definitely up there. It's definitely in the upper half for me.
Yeah, and obviously that battle system, a lot of people are not a fan of. They say it's too automated due to the gambit system and stuff, which is fair enough. I totally understand why people would think that.
Yeah. Again, subjective. Very important.
yeah. But what they did with 7 was genius. 7 Remake.
Well, Remake.
I think that is a really, really cool system that they came up with that. And yeah, as you said, I think 16 is the next natural progression for them to do this, because there is that crossover there. And yeah, you wanted to talk about other games, so let's talk about other games for a little while. So
All right,
yes,
give me. Well, okay. Well, we'll try and cut it because, like, we'll try and cut it down. Give me
so
5.
5. Okay,
5 games
oh,
off the top of your head. Go.
Oh god, I'm just looking
I'll
at
go
my
first then.
desktop.
I'll go first.
Go
All
for
right.
it.
So my favorite game ever is A Link to the Past, Zelda. I love Zelda games. I really, really love Zelda games. Just putting that out there. But you're weird because you don't like Zelda.
I hate Zelda.
Yeah, you're weird. Sorry. You're entitled to your opinion, even if it's wrong. Resident Evil 2. Love Resident Evil 2. I know Resident Evil 4 is probably a better game, but I just have more of an affinity for Resident Evil 2. Street Fighter 4. I'm a huge fighting game fanatic. I have Vega from Street Fighter tattooed on my back. I actually do, well, I do technically have a Final Fantasy tattoo, but it's not from Final Fantasy. Resident Evil 2, Link to the Past, Castlevania Dawn of Sorrow. I'm a massive Castlevania junkie, Metroidvania junkie. I love Metroid, I love Castlevania, Hollow Knight, any of that stuff. So I love fighters, I love action RPGs, I love horror, well, certain horror games, only the ones where you can fight back, because the ones where you have to be stealthy, I swear to God, if there's stealth in FF16, I'm not going to be happy about it. I know, because FF15 tried to shoehorn it in. I'm like, oh, get out. Phantasy Star Online comes to mind.
Really?
I love that game. When I was a teenager, I loved Phantasy Star Online.
Yeah.
Or Doom 2016.
Oh, yeah, I forgot. That was another hot take you had, wasn't it? That you prefer 2016 to Eternal, right?
That's not a hot take. Loads of people agree with me on that.
Do they? Because I'd argue that Eternal is just better to 2016.
No, I don't agree. I think that Doom... Well, that comes from me being a fan of Doom. Like, I think Doom 2016 feels more like Doom. Whereas Doom Eternal kind of separates itself more. And you're right. Maybe you're right. Maybe it is a better game by a lot of people's standards. But for me, the nostalgia goggles were heavy for 2016. And I loved it. So, shooters, again, I'm like... There's certain ones I really like. Usually the old school arena type thing like Quake, Doom, Unreal Tournament, stuff like that. Sci-fi shooters I like, okay, but not Halo. Well, I could never mess with Halo.
All right, well, I hate having to do this because it's always really difficult. Because obviously I can't include Final Fantasy.
If it's easy, it's not worth asking.
That's what I mean. I can't include Final Fantasy in this, and that makes it really difficult.
Final Fantasies.
So
no. Bravely Default. That doesn't. Oh no, that doesn't count. That's basically Final Fantasy.
So, Devil May Cry 5 is in like my top. Is in like my top 3 now. That game is incredible. Like I spoke about being able to replay games and how I have difficulty doing that.
Yeah.
Devil May Cry 5, I have always had ever since I bought it. I've had it installed on my PC and I've never taken it off. Because I love just to turn it on and play it for. Even if I just go into Bloody Palace for an hour or two, I'll just keep doing it. And Virgil is the most fun I've had in a video game in a long time.
I do love a bit of Virgil.
Bloodborne.
Shit, I didn't say Bloodborne.
So I'm not a huge...
Yeah,
so I'm not a huge FromSoft guy, believe it or not. So
I wasn't until I got through to Bloodborne. Bloodborne took me a few tries to get into, but now I'm obsessed with it. See, this is why it's hard, because I was like, oh, but what about this one? Oh, but what about this one? Oh, but what about this one? So, yeah. No, I've said my piece now. I can't add anymore.
So, like, I talk about Bloodborne in depth forever because I am a huge H.P. Lovecraft fan. Like, obviously...
I love gothic horror stuff.
So, I've played the other Souls games and Elden Ring, and I struggled to finish them. Because
I was obsessed with Elden Ring.
Elden Ring's a brilliant game. I need to finish it. I've only got about halfway through.
I passed it. Loved it.
Yes. So I
loved it.
But I prefer Bloodborne. I just prefer.
I also think Bloodborne's a better game.
What else? I had to. This sounds really generic, but I have to put Call of Duty 4 in here.
Yeah, like it's. I mean, you know, it is a part of gaming history.
Yeah, I just absolutely adored that game. I was in like a proper team for it, for like esports and everything. Like, I was super into Call of Duty. I have to put a Sonic game in here.
Which one?
Somewhere.
3 and Knuckles for me. That was when I was a kid. It was always 3 and Knuckles.
Honestly, it's probably Mania.
It is really good.
Mania is really good.
Mania is very good.
Mania is another one of those games that I can go back and replay as well, and it's just really fun to just play.
I think
it again.
if it weren't for nostalgia, I'd probably pick that too.
Yeah. I need what? I need 2 more or 1 more?
1 more. That was your 4th.
1 more. I know there's one that's like sitting there, it's sitting me in the face, and
It's interesting that neither you or I have said Smash Bros.
I don't have that kind of connection with it.
It's weird. Like, I spent that much time on it, going to all these events and tournaments and stuff. It has all my favorite characters in it. Like, I mean, I tell you now, when they are now, I don't do reaction content really. I do a little bit, but not really. I wish I had filmed my reaction to Sephiroth's reveal in Super Smash Bros. I fell off my chair.
Oh yeah, I did too.
I actually fell off my chair. I was like, no.
I remember I was in a phase where I wasn't enjoying Smash Ultimate that much, and I remember I was like, here we go, here's the Smash announcement. It's like, it can't be anything that I particularly care about, can it? And I was like,
yeah, I was gagged. I was gagged.
As soon as I heard the first note of One Wing Angel, I knew exactly what it was. Like,
I sat well because yeah, to be fair, Smash Bros caught me like that twice. Once for Simon and Richter Belmont, and once for Sephiroth.
Oh yeah,
that was I was done. Well, I'll be curious, like while he's thinking about it, because he's going to take ages. Like, well, you know, if any of you guys wanted to comment on your other favorite games, then please feel free. Oh, there we go. He's got there now.
Pokemon Platinum.
Oh, okay. That was actually my first Pokemon game.
Or Heart Gold and Soul Silver. I can't decide between them two. Yeah, basically. That's my favorite generation of Pokemon.
Yeah, Pokemon and Final Fantasy have quite a lot of crossover because I mean, do you know it's weird? I talk to a lot of people, and the number of people I encounter that say that Pokemon isn't a JRPG, although that's something to talk about as well, like the term JRPG and how that's kind of, I think it's because Yoshi P said he didn't like the term JRPG, which I understand, to be honest. Like, what separates it by being Japanese? Like, you know, it doesn't make any difference. Like, a Western person could make an RPG that could be classed as a JRPG, and FromSoft's RPGs aren't seen as JRPGs, even though that's exactly what they are by definition. So it's weird, but yeah, so I can see it, but you know, you hear the word JRPG and it conjures up an image. People seem to refuse to believe that Pokemon is one, and I don't get why. Even
though it was one of the most early successful animes that brought anime to the West.
When I think they take issue just like associating it with JRPGs. Like, people think that Final Fantasy, Dragon Quest, Pokemon, they're all very, oh god, Dragon Quest 11, I really love Dragon Quest. Oh,
you know, I'd argue though that Final Fantasy is less JRPG than Pokemon is.
So would I. No, I agree with you. I think that Final Fantasy has a large spectrum of genres it covers. Obviously, it always returns to JRPG, like, eventually. But actually, that's a nice question to ask. What's your favorite Final Fantasy game that isn't a numbered title? I have 2. Because I'm a huge Theatrhythm fan. I love Theatrhythm, so Final Bar Line. Actually, Curtain Call. I mean, Final Bar Line is strictly better, but the memories I have with Curtain Call are really special. And Tactics Advance. There's a hot take. I don't actually love Crisis Core very much. A lot of people read me to filth, and I really don't love Crisis Core.
I'm more talking about I need to remember them, because none of them have super stuck with me, I'll be honest.
Explorers, Tactics Advance, Dirge Cerberus, like the compilation of FF7 stuff, so Dirge Cerberus, Crisis Core, then you've got the Theatrhythm games, then you have, there's so many FF games out there.
Probably Crisis Core and Theatrhythm.
Yeah, okay.
To be honest, I really, because obviously the first one I played was this new one, Final Bar Line.
Yeah.
And I loved it. I thought it was absolutely brilliant.
It is great. It translates very well from a touchscreen to controller inputs, and I'm pretty good at Theatrhythm. Like, I can do, if you've played Theatrhythm, you'll know what I'm talking about, but I can do some supreme difficulty songs on like up to like difficulty 13 out of 16. But you know, if you go to difficulty 16s, that Battle of the Big Bridge remix where it goes off, I don't know, you need to have like 8 arms to do that. You need to be Gilgamesh to do that.
I used to be pretty good at the drums in Rock Band 2. but that's only because. Oh, I should probably preface. I didn't actually mention that in any background about me. I'm also a musician. I didn't mention that earlier.
No.
I play the drums and play a little bit of guitar, but drums is my main instrument. Been playing for about 8 years. Used to be in a band that didn't last, but yeah.
Drama?
No. It was more that.
Oh, how boring.
No. We're still really good friends now, even me and all the band members. But
Yeah.
I think it's more. Actually, I give a quick shout out to the guitarist in my band is now doing really well. He's in a band called 2 Year Break. They just last year recorded a song with Charlie Simpson from Busted.
That's cool.
So they're doing really well. So if you want to go listen to them, I'll give them a quick shout out. So 2 Year Break. There you go.
Nice. I mean, I do a lot of art stuff. Like, so for my background, like I said, my career path's gone all over the place. Like, I used to work at a tattoo shop as a designer. Then I worked for a card game store where I like hosted a lot of tournaments. I traveled, I judged, I did all of that. That's how I got into card games in general. Then I left that and I worked in America for a games company. I miss LV, Las Vegas a lot. I miss a lot of my friends over there, but I had to come home because I'd run out of money, basically. Then I was a freelance makeup artist for a long time because I've always had a very artistic background. I draw, I paint, I do makeup, I've done cosplay, anything creative I love. So I did that. And then I started doing YouTube just because as a hobby, and then I ended up working at Square Enix. I was a community manager for their mobile titles. Then when the pandemic hit, I left there, and then I went into full-time streaming, and that's what I do now. So my career's just done this.
I did say finger in too many pies, right?
Yes.
So
I'm definitely what you would define as a jack of all trades kind of guy.
Don't finish that sentence because I know what you were about to say after that.
I didn't say anything.
I was gonna say, all right, because I knew afterwards you were about to say master of none, and I'm like you're good at a lot of things, Joe.
Yeah, but I could be better at all of them. Just saying.
Yeah, well, you can always be better at something, right? It doesn't mean that you're not good at a field.
No, that's very
I'm
true.
good at drums, but I'm not like Joey Jordanson, am I? So
I'll pretend I know who that is.
That's the drummer for Slipknot, by the way.
Right,
in case
got it.
anyone needs to know that.
Do
Okay.
I look like I listen to Slipknot? Don't answer that.
Well.
So do you have any sort of finishing things that you'd like to say, or, you know, if anything that we can expect from future episodes that you'd like to talk about?
Well, first off, I hope everyone enjoyed, right? Because at the end of the day, they're probably used to seeing your face, Joe, but they got to put up with my mug as well. So, you know, I'm new to this as well, so people might think, oh, who's this guy? So it'd be cool if people could
Provide
engage
feedback, but in a nice way.
Yes, or do that. That's fine as well. Because I think we might have had a little bit of an echo earlier on, and we apologise for that. But we'll.
Yeah, no, I, you know, as you say, like, we're both new to this. Like, this is the first time I've really kind of worked with anybody else on the channel, but it's something I really want to do a lot more of. And as I say, I've got a lot of friends within the industry that I'd love to get on here. The only other time I've done anything like this is I interviewed Susan Calloway last year, who is the singer for the main themes in Final Fantasy XIV. She was lovely, absolutely delightful person. But like, there's a lot of people that I've met in the last year, because I am somebody that if you put me, I'm like the worst nerd ever. You put me in a real life situation, put me at a party, put me in a convention, put me anything like that, I will talk to every bugger in the room. Put me behind a keyboard and I'm useless. There's a reason that I do video content.
That's fine. Also, it'd be great if we have a lot of topics in mind and things and talking points, and there's a lot that we're going to be covering. Don't worry. There's a big list that I wrote down that we will get to eventually.
We did have quite a big list.
However, I will welcome other people's input. If anyone wants to, if they have a topic that they would like to hear or anything like that, then by all means, just put it down in the comments, and we'll try our best to get to it. As I said, we do have quite a big backlog, but if it's an interesting topic that we both like and we think we could, you know, talk about for an hour plus, because obviously you got to remember that it needs to be something that we can talk about in detail. We can't just make 15
not Final Fantasy 11.
No,
not yet. Give me time.
I don't know what to do about that because I don't know if I'll ever play 11 because I'm not a masochist, but still.
I've heard horror stories, but I've also heard really lovely stories. And I do want to play 11 just because I can't have there be one FF game I haven't played. I can't do it. So the sorts of things that you can I reckon that you can expect to hear us talking about. We want to do full episodes on FF14, FF16, obviously when it comes around. We may well do like dedicated episodes to each game because there's so much to talk about within a game. We may well do just conversations about like particular story arcs, emotional points that people have felt like from playing these games, the music, sort of the evolution. Obviously, as Lucis is a sort of a games developer, I think that he's going to have a lot of really interesting insights on things that perhaps I wouldn't know about, the social aspect, where we all come together on this stuff. So I think that's the pod. I think that's it. I think that's everything. So,
is this a thing now, by the way? The pod. You said
we're
it 3
calling
times.
It's the pod.
Okay, the pod.
It's the pod. Yes, thank you very much to everyone who's come along today and who's listening and who's enjoying the time. And as Lucis rightfully says, if there's anything you want us to cover in greater detail next time, then let us know, whether it be on my Discord or if you want to come and find me on Twitch. I'm on there most days these days. And, you know, come and chat to me about it, or if you've got a particular topic in mind, because what we want to do is create lively discussion, friendly discussion, and basically just grow a community based on a shared love of a franchise. So if you're up for that, then it'd be lovely to have you. So thanks very much for that, everybody. And don't forget to like and subscribe and all that crap that YouTubers tell you to do.
Do it.
Yeah, just do it. Just do it. It doesn't take 2 seconds. And then, yeah, I think that's going to be it. So thank you very much, everyone, and we'll see you next time. Bye.